Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you a recipe called Decadent Gluten-Free Date Bars. And this recipe came from the Nielsen-Massey vanilla website. And they have also sent me some vanilla. Nielsen-Massey is a family-owned and operated producer of premier pure vanillas and flavor extracts. All products are all natural, allergen-free, non-GMO, project verified, and certified kosher and gluten-free. They sent me this box and they sent me pure vanilla extract and a jar of their pure vanilla bean paste, which you've seen me use this quite a bit, and I've also used this quite a bit as well. So thank you so much to Nielsen-Massey Vanilla for sending me these products. This recipe is also from their website. They have a lot of recipes that look amazing. Although there will be a few changes that I make. Of course, to make it sugar-free, I'll be using honey. But also, I'm going to make the version today dairy-free as well. And we're going to be using the pure vanilla extract in this recipe. So I've got my oven preheated to 350. And that's about 1.5 cups of walnuts that I've just toasted. And then I've got a 9x13 casserole dish here with about a tablespoon of coconut oil. If you've ever used coconut oil before, you know it's pretty solid. So I'm going to put this in the oven for just a minute to melt this oil so I can grease my pan. Just so I don't forget, set the timer. As I mentioned, I'll be making this recipe. It's already a gluten-free recipe, but I will be using my own flour blend, and I will be using honey, of course, instead of sugar, but I'm also going to be using a can of coconut milk. And this is the coconut cream. It's unsweetened, and it does tend to separate. My 1 minute is up already. Let me see if I can spread around this coconut oil. Oh, perfect. So I'm just using a pastry brush just to grease my pan. But this recipe, it doesn't use any butter. It already uses coconut oil. And so I figured instead of using the half and half that the recipe calls for, I would just use a can of coconut cream and make this dairy-free. But of course, you can look for the full recipe on their website, which I'll put a link to that below. And I would think that if you don't like coconut for some reason, you could just use butter in place of this coconut oil. And we also have some other coconut oil we'll be putting in the crust. And I would imagine you'd be able to substitute that with butter if for some reason you don't like coconut oil. So now that I've got that greased, while I'm waiting for my walnuts to cool off, I'm going to start chopping up my dates. And these are whole dates that have the pits in them. And you could use a food processor if you want to, but I'm just going to use my knife and take the pits out. And the recipe calls for about 1 pound of chopped dates. And I've got about 30 dates here. Some are kind of small because I'm using a little bit more coconut milk than what the recipe calls for if you're using half and half. I'm adding in a little bit of extra dates and a little bit of extra walnuts. And we're going to be cooking these in a saucepan, so it's okay if they're not super fine pieces. I'm just going to go, a roughish chop, just little pieces. Dates are so sticky. So we want about 2.5 cups of chopped dates. And this is a 2-cup measure that is just about all the way to the top. And I'm just going to empty that into my saucepan, clean up my mess here. So we want about 1 cup of chopped walnuts. And I mentioned I'm going to go a little bit more than 1 cup. And I'm just going to give them a rough chop. You don't want any really big pieces. But sometimes when you get walnuts, they're in smaller-ish pieces anyways. This recipe is a delicious dessert. Or this is a really good brunch. If you've never tried dates before, you really should. They're really delicious, but you can do so many things with dates. I'm making a mess. And that's about 1.5 cups of chopped walnuts. And I know usually you don't measure dry ingredients in a liquid measuring cup, but it's okay. So into the saucepan, my little napkin trick, move that out of the way. To my dates and my walnuts in this saucepan, we're going to add in the coconut cream. And I've got some dry spices here, almond extract, and then of course our pure vanilla extract. And I've mentioned before, a butter knife is so handy with this coconut cream when it separates. And this is about a 13-ounce can of coconut cream. 1 tablespoon of pure vanilla extract, 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract, and in this bowl I have 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, all in here. And then I'm going to give this a really good stir, get this all mixed up, and then we'll cook it. It already smells so good. So I'm going to put this on about medium-high heat. We're going to cook and stir for about 5 minutes. If you guys could smell this right now, it smells so good. After about 5 minutes, just set that aside. I'll leave it right there and we'll work on our crust. It cleaned up a little bit, by the way. I'm sure you noticed. And my pan right here with my coconut oil. One thing about coconut oil, when it dries, you can really see that you did a good job of coating your pan. So that's ready to go. Again, my oven is at 350. In this bowl, I have 1 2/3 cup of my gluten-free flour, 1.5 cups of gluten-free instant oats, all in there. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to lightly mix this together. Such a fast and easy dessert to put together. So to the dry mixture, I've got 1/2 cup of melted coconut oil. And I'm just going to pour this in. It's cooled off, but it is still melted. And then I have 1/3 cup of honey and 1 teaspoon of molasses. This recipe calls for brown sugar, which I'll give you the equivalents to. The reason I'm using the molasses is to give that caramely flavor that brown sugar would. And then another 1 tablespoon of this pure vanilla extract. And 1 egg. So 1 egg, and then we'll just give this a really good mix. Make sure to scrape the bottom and the sides. Once you've got that all mixed together, bring over your casserole dish. And we're going to go about 2.5 cups of this dough into the casserole dish. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. But you could measure exactly if you want to. I'll put a little bit back. There we go. But I just spread it out a little bit, and then we can start pressing it in to form our crust. My pan keeps moving. Once you've got your crust evenly pressed into your pan, I'm going to wash my hands and set this aside. And to the remaining crust, I'm just going to break it apart a little bit. I have 1 cup of dark chocolate chips. And I'm just going to mix this all together. In fact, it might even be easier with my hands. But the spatula works pretty good. I didn't need to wash my hands. I'm just going to mix these chocolate chips and the rest of this crust all together. And it's okay if they're not fully mixed in. We're going to sprinkle this on the top of our date filling. And if you're me, you could just eat this right here by itself without cooking it first. But I'll wait. I'll save it for the top of the bars. Okay. And it's going to be a little bit crumbly, and we're going to crumble it more when we crumble it on top. So it's just fine, but that looks really good. Now I'll wash my hands again. So bring back our crust. And our filling is still a little bit warm, but that's all right. It's really thick. In fact, I'm going to switch to my spatula. Same spatula that I was using my crust for. And I'm just going to pour this on and spread it out. Just make sure to spread this all into an even layer. That looks really good. And now we'll just take our remaining crust mixed with the chocolate chips and just sprinkle this on top. And it's okay if it doesn't cover the top completely. And once you're happy with that, I'm going to lightly press it into this filling here. Maybe share some of this over here. Just make sure you're happy with it. Okay, that looks really good. This will go into the oven, again at 350, for about a half hour. I'm getting everything sticky. Smells so good. And it looks really good too. And I like how you can see the bits of chocolate chips. Now we just wait for this to cool off and then we can cut it into bars. My date bars are all cooled off. Just going to loosen on the side here a little bit before we cut into them. They look really good. Turn it back around. You could put ice cream on this, or just as is, whipped cream, although then it wouldn't be dairy free. But it looks really good. So good. And even though there's cayenne pepper in here, you don't taste that either, but I think it cuts through the sweetness of the dates. But it's just the perfect combination. And just a little bit of chocolate on top. But this is a perfect dessert. And you could serve it slightly warm. I would eat this for breakfast. Although I would eat most desserts for breakfast. But it's really good. I hope you try this recipe. Let me know what you think. And thank you to Nielsen-Massey Vanilla for sending me their pure vanilla extract and pure vanilla bean paste. I hope you try their products as well. I'll put a link to their website below where you can find this recipe and other recipes, and of course their products. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next one.